Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. And as I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve to have a therapist, a good one, and might have to search around for a while. Let's watch.
I'm very upset, and I'm very upset with him right now.
I don't feel safe here.
너무 속상하다.
들어가면서 뭐야 이러고 갔어요. 그냥 좀 이상하고 뭐 이런 데를 얻었지?
This neighborhood very sucks. They will get mad at me.
Okay, so why would Jihoon do what he did? From the looks of it, he was telling Deavan that he had a good job. He was earning a lot of money when he wasn't. He told her that he had a great place lined up when he hadn't even looked at it yet. Why would he do that? Well, one perspective is that there's something wrong with him, like he has a cognitive problem, which is possible. More likely, he is procrastinating. He procrastinates a lot, and it's part of a broader behavioral pattern that we've seen in him, which is avoidance of things that are difficult for him. And what the avoidance does is it just pushes the can down the road and causes more problems that he has to adjust to later on. And I suspect that he was raised in such a way where he felt like he either is incompetent. And so let me hypothesize. I don't know him, but he seems to exhibit some dependent personality spectrum traits. I don't know. I'd have to ask him. Total speculation. But if we were to go off that hypothesis and conceptualize why he would do what he was doing, there's a possibility that he's thinking, okay, I've got to make a good home for my wife and my kids, for them to come over and stay. And then he says, but I don't have enough money to buy a good place. So what do I do? Well, I need to get a better job. Well, to get a better job, I need skills. And to get skills, I need to start at the bottom. To start at the bottom, I need to earn not that much money. I don't know what I'm going to do. Screw it, I'll just play video games. Screw it, I'll just watch TV. Screw it, I'll just, lie to myself and go into denial. It's an avoidance tactic that's based on a tremendous amount of anxiety, based on this schema of I will fail. There's just no way this is going to work out for me because I always fail because everyone always tells me I'm a failure. And look at my life, I'm a failure. So why even try because I'm going to fail? And it just perpetuates more failure, which causes him to believe that he's a failure even more, which causes him to exhibit more avoidance behavior and more failure, and the vicious cycle goes on and on. Some of you might know people like this in your life or might even be people like this. Some of you have emailed me about this. So that's a possibility. And because otherwise, how do you explain why he would do this? It's so illogical. Why would he shoot himself in the foot this way? This is what dependency is like. It is pathological. It is a personality disorder. It shoots us in the foot. It is detrimental. It's destructive in all sorts of ways. A lot of times people look at characterize dependent people as like, oh, they're just moochers. They're just childish people that are trying to mooch off the system. It's not usually the case. Usually people want to succeed, particularly in situations like this, because he is incurring a lot of criticism and judgment from everyone, from his wife, from his mother-in-law, from his parents, from us, the audience, are looking at him and saying, dude, what's wrong with you?
I want to cry. Everybody disappointed me. Rosella, let's go. Go inside. This way. Rosella.
This way? Okay.
Now, I don't know what Deavan thought was going to happen. She knew that he doesn't have a lot of money. She suspected he was lying about the money, which seemed pretty obvious given the way he was talking about it, because I didn't show the clip. But Deavan asked Jihoon, how much money are you making now? Because when they were on video chat. And he says, oh, I don't know. You don't know how much money you're making at your new job? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And he's, oh, well, like 3,000, 4,000. And then they have an argument. He says, oh, yeah, like 7,000. So obviously he's lying. So what did you expect? One, he was doing that. Two, this is his track record. Three, he has never had a career of any kind. And it's expensive to live in the city of Seoul. So I don't know what she expected. There would be this palatial house that they were going to move into that barely anyone can afford at all in that country. So, yeah, it's... but what do you do if you're in Devan's situation? You just have to hope. Now, what I would like to see, which almost never happens, is that Deavan and Jihoon sit down and respect each other, and they're like, okay, let's make a plan. What's our situation now, and where are we going to go from here? Instead, what I'm guessing we're going to see is more judgment. As she puts him down, he will be ashamed of himself and feel like he's a failure, which he always feels like he's a failure, and it'll just continue that vicious cycle.
This situation is very messed up because of me.
Right. So he's had that attitude before. Now, on one hand, you could say, well, he's just saying that because he's manipulating the audience or everyone around him. Or this is his baseline. He vacillates between two modes. One is, I'm a failure. Look at me. I'm totally ashamed of myself. I screw everything up. I always screw everything up. And I'm going to avoid everything and just hope everything works out, even though I know it won't. I think those are his two modes. So right now he's in the I'm a failure mode. And I think if the hypothesis is correct, which is true for a lot of people who exhibit this behavior, is he genuinely believes, and has always believed since he was a young child, that he is automatically a failure. He is not good at anything, and he will always screw everything up. But he has attachment needs, and so he's trying to meet his attachment needs while dragging this, ball and chain behind him of I'm a failure.
Another place, an apartment.
I can't stay here for a month. Junie, you don't help. It's just to the point where I can't do it anymore.
I said I will do everything.
You said
so sorry.
that. You said that when you found out I was pregnant. That was a year ago.
Right. And so all of the lying results in Deavan being very hurt by that, losing all trust, which there must have been very little to begin with anyway because of all the problems that he's exhibited up until this point. And so she's upset. And now we're going to see the dynamic play out where he is like, yep, here we go. I'm a failure. Everyone always makes me out to be a failure. Now, the other side of dependency that is often present, not always, is this part of the person that is very stubborn. So people on the dependent personality spectrum, and there's a lot of people on the spectrum, and they vary a lot in their personalities in terms of other aspects of their personality. But oftentimes what accompanies this incompetent schema and I'm a failure schema and childishness schema, which you've talked about before, where you come across as childish and you think of the world in a childish way, you expect other people to pick up after you. The flip side to this often is a side of the person that's extremely angry and stubborn, almost like a difficult 2-year-old or a difficult 4-year-old, who actually believes, no, I'm not incompetent. How dare you call me incompetent? I'm a good person. It's sort of a black and white state of mind, where on one hand, at the cruising speed, they believe they're a total failure, but on the other flip side of the coin, they believe that they're awesome at everything and that they're entitled to everything and they deserve everything. And they will sometimes vacillate between those two places, even within the same second. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that right now, potentially for Jihoon, if he does suffer from this schema, where he might, as she starts to berate him, which I think is justifiable under the circumstances. Berating is not justifiable, but being upset is justifiable. That a part of him will say, you blame me for everything. He won't say this necessarily, but in his subconscious or even subconscious mind, he is saying, you're unfair to me. You're always nagging me. You're always on my back. Everyone is always on my back. They don't understand what I'm going through. People pressure me too much. Everyone needs to back off. And it's a childish way of being. So they have two childish modes, essentially, the childish mode of stubborn and the childish mode of dependency. And please, mommy, help me. I don't know what I'm doing. So let's see if we can detect some of that.
사실이고요. 예. 그리고 지금 심지어 아예 지금 이사 온 첫날에 첫날부터 제가 굉장히 믿음직스럽지 못한 모습을 보여줬기 때문에.
Okay, interesting. So I think this is genuine. I'm worried that as people watch the show, they would see him as a manipulator or something. That's usually the assumption, particularly of the men on the show, when he's suffering a lot. People with dependent personality suffer a lot. I don't know if he has it, but people with that personality disorder are suffering on a constant basis. People with dependent personality, because they believe they're incompetent, it can be really depressing and demoralizing. They're basically walking around in this constant sense that there's something wrong with them and that everyone else has things figured out except for them. And then when something goes wrong, and then they procrastinate, and then something like this happens. And it is now, he can't avoid it because everyone's yelling at him, and he walks outside and he's crying and he says, "I'm the biggest effing idiot in the world." It's a very good possibility that he genuinely believes this all the time, but only some of the times he is expressing it.
You didn't pay for that though.
또 그런 비슷하.
I'm not being
I
happy.
I understand. I know you've paid everything before.
But can't you help with the new rental?
After I all pay everything.
When?
I'm.
So if I'm right, which I have no idea, I'd have to ask Jihoon if it makes any sense that he's on the dependent schema spectrum. If I'm right about it, which I don't know, asking him, when is this going to happen, is like asking a depressed person, when are you going to be happy? To ask someone with dependent personality, when are you going to be not dependent? When are you going to be competent? When are you going to succeed? When are you not going to be a failure? That is, it cuts to the core of the issue for them, where they might come up with certain things to say, but they instantly in their mind say, but it's not going to work because I'm a failure. I can't do things on my own. I've never been able to do things on my own. The only way I can possibly live a happy life is if someone is there telling me what to do and feeding me and earning money and giving me a house to live in, because I'm completely incompetent. It's not going to work. So it's hard to watch this because, of course, Deavan has every right to ask these questions, but if I'm right about this, it's like they're having a conversation without recognizing the elephant in the room, which is his personality, which is based on his upbringing. So it's frustrating because I want to get in there and be like, okay, absolutely, Deavan, 100%, you're right. You have every right. Jihoon, let's talk about this. When she says that, what's going on in your mind? Let's explore that. What sort of gets in the way of you achieving your goals? Certainly for the past number of years, you've been with Deavan and you've had all sorts of goals. You've wanted a good paying job. You've wanted to live on your own. You've wanted to provide for your family. What's getting in the way? Instead of this assumption that he's lazy or that he just needs to do it.
Why do you keep lying to me?
사실 솔직하게 너 여기 오게 하고 싶었고.
I honestly wanted you to come here.
Fast. 만약에 너가 돈 때문에 걱정하게 되면 너가 여기를 떠나면 되잖아.
Right. So he has attachment needs. He also has a need to see his child, and he doesn't know how to get out. So for him, and I think I've said this before, that if he does suffer from dependent personality, there are two options to him. Either he tells the truth and says, I'm a failure, I'm always going to be a failure, and levels with her, and she runs away, and he doesn't get any of his attachment needs and never sees his child again. Or he tricks her and gets her to come to Korea, lies to her, and says everything will work out fine. Just be quiet, and then he hopes that maybe she'll just get used to living in a crappy apartment, or she'll get a job, and she'll support the family, and he'll be able to depend on her, and he'll be able to see her and his children. So neither option is good, right? One option, the first option, he doesn't get to see his family at all, and he is a loser and alone. The other one, he's at least not alone, but he's still a loser. So, but he And he has to continue lying, which of course incurs all this criticism. But he's used to that because he's always been a loser and he thinks of himself as a loser. I want to be clear. People with dependent personality are not losers and they're not incompetent. They just think of themselves that way because of the way they were raised. And then when they think of themselves that way, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I'm really confused because I don't have anything to go back to. I really don't have anything to go back to. But I don't have anything here either.
That's easy.
Yeah, this is what relational traumas early in life and maladaptive schemas and personality disorders will do to families. They will cause so much suffering. And Deavan is a victim of all of this. And she has every right to be upset, and I feel really bad for her, for sure.
And I, at this point, have lost all trust.
나는 이 시점에서 모든 신뢰를 잃었다.
If you loved me and the kids, you would have helped.
You're right. I'm so sorry.
Right, that's the natural conclusion, that he doesn't love her enough. And if I'm right about it, about his personality, which I have no idea, it's not about how much love. In fact, you could almost see his lying as an expression of his love, because lying to Deavan was the only way he was going to have contact with her and his kids. So that's a possibility, that he was motivated by love in this very twisted way, because he was so because he assumes that he cannot succeed based on his schemas. So now Deavan is completely in the right. She has every right to be upset. She's been lied to repeatedly. She's been disappointed. From her perspective, she has an extremely lazy, selfish husband. And it certainly, you could label it that way, but in my world, we try to find reasons that are going on underneath it. Because people don't usually wake up in the morning and say, ha, 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 I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to be selfish and have everyone hate me. That's how I want to live my life. Usually people don't do that. So why would someone shoot themselves in the foot? And I wish that they would try to ask that question for both of their sake.
I do love you.
I don't think I want to be together anymore after this.
나는 이후에 더 이상 함께 있고 싶지 않다고 생각한다.
I'm going to get a hotel tonight with just my mom so I can be alone with the kids and I can think to myself.
Yeah, if I were her friend, I might advise her to do that. I don't know what I would say. But sometimes people think that when I conceptualize people in what I believe to be an accurate way, it promotes compassion. And for some, they think it excuses their behavior, which I want to be clear, it does not excuse their behavior. It's still immoral to lie to someone. But usually if we want to change, if we're trying to change behavior, we have to figure out why someone's doing it instead of just shaming them for it, because that doesn't usually work, particularly for adults who have very ingrained schemas. But I also want to be clear that I'm not, just because I might be able to conceptualize Jihoon or have an hypothesis, let's say I work with Jihoon and we figure, yeah, he does have dependent personality and he is suffering quite a bit. That's not, I'm not saying that you're supposed to put up with it. I'm not saying you're supposed to, because, say some of you have partners where they are treating you badly, or you even have a dependent spouse who is letting you down all the time, and you have a good conceptualization of them, like, oh, I know it's because the way they were treated when they were growing up, they had overprotective parents or domineering parents, and they developed dependent personality because of that. And it's not my partner's fault. It's not my spouse's fault. So I need to put up with it. That is not necessarily the case. It's up to you, of course, but you might decide to say, no, even though I understand where it comes from, I still don't want to deal with it, because they're not going to therapy, or they're going to therapy, but it doesn't seem to be changing anything. And I have one life to live. And so I see their problem and I have compassion for them, but not for me. I'd rather find a partner that I don't have to deal with this about. Now, on the other hand, you could say, well, that's pretty mean because people with dependent personality disorder, it's not their fault, and don't they deserve to have attachment as well? Absolutely. But people in Deavan's position don't have to sacrifice their life just because someone else has relational traumas. It's up to her. She can decide to say, you know what, now, what I would recommend is that they go to a therapist. I don't know in Seoul, the access to that sort of thing. I'm guessing there are therapists for sure, and go down that road and see if that has any fruit. You definitely want it, because that would be what I would do in that situation. But if that doesn't work, then you say, well, I get it, but I don't want to be with someone like that. All right, well, that does it for that episode. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast, that's how we know you like what we are doing, when you go to patreon.com and become a patron of the podcast. Also, when you become a patron, you get access to hundreds of our best episodes, our audio episodes, where I do deep dives on various different things that I talk about when I make reaction videos. I've made hours and hours. I have one on narcissistic personality disorder, passive-aggressive personality disorder, avoidant, a lot of personality disorders, attachment theory. People really like the attachment theory deep dive. So if you haven't become a patron of the podcast, do so now if you want. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.